Alrighty, y'all voted for it, y'all want it, y'all want some Daedric Princes. So, first off, let's start with the subscribe button. You see, I need you to find the C button. Yeah, that little tiny C. Rub it, stroke it, and then hit it. Oh, feels so much better, right? Alrighty. So, now that that's out of the way, let's first talk about this. Malacath is a Daedric Prince, which means he's essentially a god. Now, what realm does Malacath really control? What's his sphere of influence? Well, that depends. You see, on one hand, he represents curses. He represents what it means when you curse somebody, when you condemn them, more or less. He also represents broken promises, betrayal. Anytime you were betrayed, Malacath is there by your side, more or less comforting you and giving you the strength to seek vengeance. Or you can curse the person who betrayed you, in which case Malacath will take care of it for you. This is more or less Malacath's domain, but he is more known as a warrior above all. This is, after all, based on the fact that his people, the orcs, have a deep, deep worship of Malacath, and they believe magic to be awful, not one of Malacath's teachings, and they believe that being a warrior is the ultimate way to live your life. They base this on the code of Malacath, which is said to come from him himself. And we do see in Skyrim and Morrowind that he is a character of strength, and that's more or less what he represents, is just brutal, vengeful strength. So, with that being said, what do we got? We got a guy who doesn't like magic. We got a guy who's very spiteful, very condemning, very evil, but very comforting to those who have been betrayed, and very comforting to those who seek strength, who seek internal strength or external. It could be that you need to bulk up, or it could be that you're having conflict within your own personality and you need help. Like oath breaking. Oath breaking is another aspect of Malacath. Let's say you're guarding a king who is just an absolute piece of shit. He's raping a woman every day. He flaunts his power, and anytime someone challenges him, he just looks at you, his bodyguard, and goes, take care of this fool. And you just consult with Malacath, and you're just like, what do I do? And Malacath is like, either kill him yourself or break your oath and come over to me. So that's interesting, to say the least. The idea that Malacath is so versatile in his role, whereas a lot of other Daedric princes are very singular. Like Jigalag, he's a Daedric prince of order, and that's it. Then you got Sheogorath, the opposite, the prince of just utter chaos and insanity. That's about it. So I find that very unique that Malacath is so versatile. So with that being said, let's talk about a little bit of history. Let's talk about how did Malacath kind of come to be. Because he's actually the youngest out of all the Daedric princes. So let's talk about it. So the way the story goes is that back when the elves were just united as a singular race known as the Aldmer, they set out to colonize the world. This would be Morrowind and later on High Rock, part of Orsinium. And as they were leaving, Trinimac, their god, who was a little bit more popular than Akatosh or Riel at the time. Trinimac was a warrior god, and he was also known as the Golden Champion. He was the ultimate pride and everything that every warrior should seek to be. Full heavy armor, always protected the weak, always had a sword at his side. This is Trinimac. Well, but one day, while his people were voyaging, Boethia attacked him and killed him and ate him. And it's said that by her eating him and shitting her out, we have now confirmed that Boethia has a butthole. So hey, that's good news. But by her shitting him out, we have essentially established the orcs. This is where they come from. Those colonists were transformed into the orcs. They're ugly, beaten people. And it seems like they're cursed, where no matter how hard they succeed, they always end up failing. Every time they establish a kingdom of Orsinium, it gets raided and destroyed by humans or elves. And then the other people, the people who colonized Morrowind, became the Chimer or Chimer. Depends how you pronounce it. For me, I say Chimer, but I know some people do pronounce it as Chimer. It does make sense after all because You have something in your stomach, in your intestines called chyme, and it's pronounced like that chyme, even though it's Chyme. So chimer, I could go either way. Now, interestingly enough, we're going to talk about this. What does Malacath represent to other cultures? So we're going to talk about 3 here, because this is where it's so important, and it ties back into the history. Malacath, as he emerged from the remains of Trinamac, he is known as Moloch by the orcs. And that's just it, Moloch. But the Dark Elves, who were the Chimer at one point, they evolved and they now have their own deities, their own saints, blah, blah, blah. And they do openly worship some Daedra. Malacath is one of those pillars of Daedra that they're more or less consider a evil Daedra, someone you really shouldn't worship, but at the same time, they pay their respects to him. They ultimately say, hey, listen, Malacath, I'm not going to worship you, but I'm going to pray that you hopefully are satisfied with the way I've conducted my life, and that hopefully you don't, decide to smite me for whatever reason. And there's a few other gods in here, like Mehrunes Dagon's another one, where again, Mehrunes Dagon is not exactly evil, although he has the biggest streak of evil where he just massacres people for no reason. But really, he stands for revolution. So, of course, Dark Elves could sometimes look at him and go, you're understandable. Sometimes I may need you and may need to pray to you. Like if I need to change or revolutionize something. But back to Malacath. So Malacath stands for, in the Dark Elf Society, as strength. Eternal strength. So if you're having, again, conflict, if you're having issues with your skill as a warrior, you may end up praying to Malacath. You may go to him and seek his strength. You may seek out what exactly it is that your body lacks and test it before Malacath. Now, when you are going about this, usually it's not very well liked upon or looked highly upon in Dark Elf Society, but it definitely speaks to your character. Like, after all, if you're a follower of House Redoran, you're a warrior at heart. And you may be having issues where other people in your house are saying that you're weak, that you're pathetic. So you may seek the aid of Malik, which is what they call Malacath, Malik. And you may seek him and say, I'm going to test my strength against you, Malik. Summon your worst. Do your worst to me. Because in House Redoran, we adhere to strength. And here it is, everyone does not seem convinced that I have it. So please test me. Other times, people will put little statues of tributes of Malik in their household to ward off curses. Because after all, what if, this is just hypothetical, what if you were working as a secretary for a really high magister, and he one day just comes in mad at everybody, mad as hell, just pissed off, and he takes it out on you? What is this? God, can I not trust you to file anything right? God, why the hell do I even hire you people? You stupid, fucking worthless guy. In fact, you're fired. Get out of here. And he throws you out of his little mushroom tower. You're going to be pissed because you had nothing to do with the exchange. He was just mad as hell about some experiment that went wrong, and he just took it out of you. So what are you going to do? You're going to say, fuck you, motherfucker. I hope Malik comes down and rains shit on your house. And sure enough, your prayer may be answered. And Malik may instead have like a group of ogres take up residence inside that wizard's tower, or something bad could happen, like the next time he does an experiment, a hand of Malik reaches down and screws with the mage's experiment in a way that ends up killing himself. This is what Malik is. He is curses. He is oath-breaking. He is defenders of the trodden. He is a very unique individual, to say the least. Now, the Nords is a very unique culture, too, because they have kind of two deities for Malik, or Malacath, if we want to go back to calling him his original name. Some Nords do call him openly just Malacath, but other gods, other Norse pantheon gods, consider him Orke. Now, Orke some would consider as Arche, the divine. Now, that would be somewhat true, but not quite. You see, the Nords believe that Orke, otherwise known as Malacath, stole years from the Atmorans. That, in other words, Lorcan, when he created the realm and stole immortality away from the elves, that Malacath, being a descendant of elves, after all, orcs are elves, he decided to seek vengeance personally and found the Atmorans and beat them down into submission and stole away their longevity. Because it used to be humanity could live for a very, very long time. Not anymore. Now, if you have a human who lives up to 100, it's considered elderly. But before, humans could. Now they can't. And it's all because of the deity known as Orke. So, in the Nordic pantheon, they view Malacath, or Orke, they view him more as the god of mortality, to remind them that they're still mortals, and that in the end, whenever they're wounded, whenever they are about to pass from old age, they know who to blame, which is Orke. They also consider him a test. They consider him a testament to what it means to be a warrior. If a Nord feels like he is truly a master of the way of the voice, a true master of the way of the axe, true master and follower of the teachings of Shor and Sun, he may decide to pit himself against Malacath and show the mountains that the mountains belong to the Nords, not to the orcs, not to the trolls, not to the ogres. It belongs to the Nords. And by the way, now that we're kind of wrapping this video up, you may wonder who does worship Malacath. Well, we already talked a bit about the Dark Elves and a little bit about the Nords, but the main followers is, of course, the orcs. Now, not only the orcs, but we also got goblins. Goblins also worship him, but it's not really clear if they understand that much. Goblin intellect is not very well established. Sometimes they're smart, sometimes they're really, really dumb. So it's uncertain whether or not they're worshiping him just because they found a statue of him, or if they're worshiping him because he's had a hand in their creation. But there is the trolls and there is the ogres. The ogres and trolls are definitely guarded by Malacath. In Oblivion, there's actually a dark elf who decided to open a plantation by subjugating ogres, which is interesting. It's a very good idea. And of course, he's a dark elf who's always scheming and thinking that he's going to get rich quick because his plantation has the best workers, slaves, which are ogres. Because you can't technically enslave ogres. They're considered wildlife. They're not considered people. Well, Malacath did not like this and wanted them to be freed. But not only freed, he wanted the ogres to take over the plantation and put the dark elf and his wife to work. So, there is definitely a lot of evidence to say that trolls, orcs, and ogres, which, by the way, all three of these have one thing in common. They're extremely tough individuals with high strength, high endurance, and very low personality because they're not very pleasing to look at. But he's got a hand in all three of these creatures. The goblins, it's kind of debatable. It's just that you may wonder why goblins at all and why it would be interesting to see goblins worshiping Malacath. Well, the main reason is that we have to look back at orc history. You see, orcs used to live with goblins. And orcs are people. Orcs are humanoids. So, back in the day when elves and man were colonizing everything in the first era and second era, and even later in the third era in Daggerfall, when they were colonizing, they would outright try to kill any orc that they saw, because orcs were not considered people. They were considered monsters. Humanoid monsters. Not intelligent enough to be humans, but intelligent enough to be a serious threat where they could craft weapons and armor and conduct raids on your cities and kill your people. So the orcs had nowhere else to live but in caves with the goblins, and they somehow coexisted for quite a while. So there is possible interbreeding between the two. It would explain a little bit of why goblins are so strong sometimes and then sometimes they're so weak. It could be because of that interbreeding. And after all, in the Elder Scrolls universe, anyone could interbreed with any other humanoid. It's just that it's the mother who dictates what the species is of the child, unless rare circumstances. Some rare circumstances, it's actually the father's species that comes out. So besides that, this has been Free 700 just rambling about Malacath. I hope you guys enjoyed and learned a bit about it. So now when you guys are playing the game, you guys can look at it and go, wow, Malacath is actually an alright dude. Or wow, Malacath is actually a very scary dude. Either way, as long as you guys subscribe to me, I really do not care. Besides that, comment down below what you guys think, and see you guys next time.